About a week ago, the Steam Next Fest ended, and this video is not talking about our experience for once, but it's talking about your guys' experience in the Steam Next Fest and kind of the bigger picture of you guys probably shouldn't all be on Steam. This is gonna be a weird video. I made something similar a year ago, where every time there's a Steam Next Fest, we ask for like viewer submitted games of, hey, are you joining the Steam Next Fest? Send us a link here, and then we're going to play your Steam Next Fest demos for the entire week, basically. We had 70 something submissions come in of people in the Next Fest. So about 2% of all Steam Next Fest submissions come from the Bite Me audience. And look, there were some good games in the Steam Next Fest as well, definitely, that got a lot of, well, deserved wishlists from it. But there were so many bad games. There's just no other way to say it. And I can somewhat quantify what counts as a bad game. I'm going to do that in this video as well, because the more and more I was playing these live streams, if you tuned in on them live as well, you can see like sometimes it was just dire. It was just sad. And I don't want that. And it made me realize more and more of, okay, we should stop putting this much value into, oh, I put a game out on Steam, because it means nothing. It means absolutely nothing to put a game out on Steam if a game then is garbage and just doesn't really have a right to exist on a premium platform like Steam, where more and more I don't really give a shit anymore about that graph of like, oh, 20,000 games on Steam, 25,000 games in 2026 or however much, because honestly, most of them are fucking garbage. And honestly, unfortunately, I am part of that problem because, hey, I'm like, hey, make your game, guys, small games and all of that, but not all of these games are good. Look, okay? And I want to talk about that of like, hey, I know you want to make games, but not everything deserves to be on Steam just yet. Like, hold your horses, don't sign up for like Steamworks and all of that yet. If you're just getting started with game development, do not worry about Steam for the next year, is I think honestly kind of the right way, or at least like half a year. Don't worry about Steam for your first games and prototypes, because there were so many demos, like I said, that just had problems. Like, I looked at the demos because this is also like, you know, Steam Next Fest is supposed to signify the last big event before your full game releases. So you're looking for a demo that is as polished and high quality as possible, because that's just how you get the most out of Steam Next Fest, basically. It's the last Next Fest you do right before your full game releases, so you hopefully have the best possible demo for your game as well. And there were a few like categories of like bad games that I would say here. The first ones is, you know, just taking an actual learning project and putting that on Steam. And with learning project, I mean like, you know, it's genuine just 2D platformer tutorials or whatever, that you're like, hey, I'm gonna spend $100 on my Steam page now, and I'm going to learn how Steam works. We'll talk about why I think learn how Steam works and how it's kind of stupid to do in the start, where it feels very much like programmer art. There's still very big parts of like gameplay or like game stuff missing, basically, that the tutorials don't cover. And it feels more like a game that is clearly just engine practice. You're learning how a third-person controller works. You're learning how these standardized concepts work without really pushing forward, doing nothing unique with them. Like, sure, you have a first-person game, but there is no cool, interesting mechanics. There's nothing really that ungenericifies your game, and it really just makes it feel like, hey, I have a simple one-level world and all of that. These are demos that get submitted to like our audience, and you also just see on the Steam Next Fest. It's not just only our audience. I'm gonna be honest there as well. I'm just hoping that I can make the collective biter audience make better games and make better demos. So those are like one style. Another style is, this one was also like a weird one, is like, okay, kind of similar to that of like, hey, I know a very basic concept, but maybe it's not a tutorial. It's kind of like a little bit of a step up. It's like, it's a 2010s game, like a browser game that you are now trying to put on a premium platform. There was this one game that was basically just, I don't know if you guys are Pokemon heads, but like in Pokemon Ruby, Sapphire, or Emerald, you have the Sutopolis gym, where there's like a puzzle that you need to like find the right way to cross the ice, and you need to like fill up all of the empty squares. This game was basically that, but with a snake. And we're looking at a premium priced puzzle game released in 2026 for a game mechanic that's been existing for 25, 30 years plus at this point, without once again really doing much new with the genre, doing anything special with the genre. And once again, I was like, okay, cool. This is kind of like learning project, but like it's a little bit higher polished, I guess. But it's once again of like, what are we doing here? Does this belong on Steam? Because sure, it's like, cool, we have our game out there, but if it's not going to be a free-to-play game, and I think free-to-play games also on Steam shouldn't really be something that you do either, because you also, once again, don't really learn that much from it. This was like, this should be an itch.io game. We'll talk about itch.io later as well. Something else that kind of like goes even deeper on this is like, I'm making a roguelike deck builder. You see this so much, but it's like, what the hell is special about your roguelike deck builder? Where you take certain genres, like survivor likes as well, but you, at the end of the day, are unable to make anything new and interesting and unique about it. I think this next fest, especially, the worst contender for that was what we call like Nodebuster like, which are these incremental games where you have like the circle and you hover over something for 10-15 seconds. And then once that's done, okay, you go to a forced upgrade tree and you repeat that. And this is a genre that was pretty successful 9 months ago, 6 months ago. Games like Keep on Mining, Game About Feeding a Black Hole. And now you guys see that. You all watch Aramis as well. And you're like, I'm going to make this style of an idle game as well. And you forget the most important part of game development, that is just make a good game. And these are games that don't do anything new. They don't do anything different. I think copying games is one thing, but copying games and making them worse than the thing you're copying is just the biggest like faux pas, red flag, sin you can do, whatever you want to call it. And you saw this once again with the next fest. And it's like, if you cannot do anything better than what already exists, I think once again, you should not start thinking about, oh, I'm going to put this up on Steam as a premium game and I'm going to charge money for it. And then the last kind, which is once again kind of a hybrid between like, I'm just following a tutorial, is also those games that you can just tell of, oh, the developer was kind of just fed up and wanted to ship something. It's like, I also talked to some people in chat when the developers are in chat. I'm like, oh, you know, this game, like maybe it could have some potential, but like this would need to be changed, this would need to be changed, whatever. Like it's missing certain things, but like the concept itself could work. And then the developer just responds of like, ah, no, I'm shipping it in 2 weeks. I just want to be done with it. And on the one hand, it's like, okay, you want to be done with it. I can understand that if the game doesn't make sense for you to keep working on it, then it doesn't make sense to keep working on it. But on the other hand, I think going into Steam with that idea of I just want to ship something, and that is your main priority, not is the game good? Is it something that people are interested in? Or am I doing something that is worthwhile? It's just like such a weird motivation for, once again, putting your game on Steam that I think, honestly, you're better off, once again, not bothering with it, because yeah, sure, you're going to release with 150 wishlists, but it's not going to mean anything. And I think there's a bunch of problems that come as well with tacking on Steam with those, honestly, often first few game releases as well, where first problem is you need to know your environment. Steam is a commercial platform. Steam is the only big platform. I know that as well, but you are competing with the AAA games. You are competing with the triple indie games. You're competing with even just regular indie games of developers who do actually give a shit about making a good game and making a game that is worth paying money for. And just putting your game out there, you are immediately like raising the minimum level of effort that you need to have if you honestly really want to play on Steam. And with play on Steam, I mean like play between like all of the other developers of like, you can put a game on there. Nothing is stopping you. Steam will not be like, hey, your game is too bad, we cannot put it on here. But I just wish that you, as a developer, would have that standard of, yeah, actually, maybe this game is too bad. Because like, let's say every game on Steam that is like made by somewhat competent developers that are actually getting decent amounts of success of like people are buying it, they're making a few $1,000 at least, is like a 6 out of 10 game. Yeah, probably like a 6 out of 10 game. A lot of our audience's games are not 6 out of 10 games. Even some of our games are not 6 out of 10 games, but at least we understand that, hey, if it's not a 6 out of 10 game, we understand that maybe we should not continue working on this game if we do not see a potential of this is going to become a better game. We can feasibly make this a 7 out of 10, an 8 out of 10 game. Going for 10 out of 10 games, I know, is incredibly hard, and that's also not what you should go for. But I think you should go at least for being able to clear that minimum bar of getting like a 6.5 out of 10 game. It should not be that hard. That's kind of the thing as well, where players will just not care about your game because there are so many other good games out there already. Another thing that you see is like, oh, but Steam is way bigger than itch.io, so I can get more market validation, for example. But it's like, if you have 100 wish lists, you do not have enough data, you do not have a good enough feedback loop to actually learn anything more than just, oh, my game is not good enough, or oh, I'm making a game in the wrong genre. This reminds me of also all of those Reddit posts you see of like, I was working on my dream game for 3 years and I don't know why like my launch failed so miserably, and it's like you're making another goddamn 2D pixel art platformer, or you're making another goddamn Sokoban game where there's just not that appeal for that basically, but you don't see that, and that's like, it's very easy to be like, oh, here's what I learned, don't make 2D platformer, but there is so much more that matters, because 2D platformers can still honestly somewhat perform well. It's just that you are not making a good enough 2D platformer, and you don't have the skills to make a good enough 2D platformer yet. And let's keep in mind though that at a good 2D platformer, you're looking at a 9.5 out of 10 as like the minimum bar, which most people will not hit. But for other games, that minimum bar is lower once again, depending on the genre. It's way easier to be able to say, oh, these are the big mistakes you make for your game if you get some level of like success already. I think the best example of this, of like what is kind of like the minimum scale to use like Steam as like market research or validation, even though it's kind of too late then, is what we did with Overtime Anomaly, where we still had a certain level of audience. We still had a certain level of reviews and feedback, and because of that, we were able to much better pinpoint, these are kind of the problems game design wise that we ran into. These are some of the problems that are more like, you know, of the small little things that make a game a better game, that are not like big game design things in general as well. All of those things you are simply not getting enough data points and feedback for if you're launching a game with like 100 wish lists, 200 wish lists or whatever. There's also like a Reddit post, I don't know if I can find it, of like someone who was like, we got 200 wish lists, here everything we did. And they did like, they sent out a trailer, they made shorts, they did all of this stuff for their game. But at the end of the day, 200 wishlists is not enough data to correctly be able to say, oh, this is a really good marketing approach for us. This is not, because you're working at too small of a scale at that point to realize what does and doesn't work. And if your game is just not good enough yet, no matter what you do, trailer-wise or anything like that, basically, are you going to get to that scale that you can take meaningful lessons from your game apart from just my game wasn't good enough? And then it's also like, lastly, you add more business complexity by wanting to release on Steam from the beginning as well. Stupid stuff, but making like good store pages, localizing your store pages, worrying about spending money on capsules, getting good capsule art commissioned, or just knowing how to make it yourself, figuring out how am I going to price this game optimally, how am I going to actually really market this game. You're adding so many more things, and I think like another big one often is you need to have a business entity set up if you want to be on Steam, and then having a business entity set up means you also have some level of recurring costs as well, that once again, if these are your first games and you're not even 100% certain if you want to keep doing this game dev stuff, it's kind of just a waste of time and money that you could way better spend on your game instead. It's like, my brother, you should not be worrying about optimizing your Steam page capsule if your demo does not even have a main menu. If the demo just instantly starts into the game, you don't have settings and all of that, it's like you are putting your priorities at the wrong parts of game development at that point. I think it's way better to just be able to make a game in an isolated field, even though maybe not that many people will see it, versus trying to do everything from the start, only to then fail miserably. So what should you do instead? Because if Steam isn't the approach, then what is the approach? And there's like a few approaches here, but I think the big one is just like itch.io. Yeah, it's not as big of a platform, absolutely, and yeah, you're probably not going to be making any money from your games on itch.io, but on the other hand, let me tell you, if you're launching a game with 100 wishlists, you're also not going to get your break-even Steam store page credits paid back and all of that. I think you need to have a little bit of humility and be like, okay, I'm kind of not a good game developer now. itch.io is kind of just a platform where you can put out whatever you're working on. And you can do like some level of marketing as well, even for itch.io games, or joining game jams, making a lot of different prototypes, or even trying to make a real game on itch.io as well that's like more polished already. You see this with horror games a lot, where like it's a pretty polished 20-minute horror game experience. Too short to put on Steam, but that doesn't stop the developer from putting in effort and releasing it on itch.io, for example, and doing a content creator push. And this is a way more beginner-friendly approach without also putting too much pressure on yourself of like making something that is immediately commercially viable. Let's first focus on making the game before we start focusing on how do I actually make a game that people want to buy and pay me money for as well? Kind of like also going with these free-to-play games on itch.io, for example, allows you to get more feedback as well, because people will be more interested in trying a game if it costs nothing, basically. And it doesn't need to be itch.io even. You can do other platforms as well, where you can get your start with like web development. Maybe it's a little bit of a different genre, and with web development I don't mean websites, but like Crazy Games or Pokey or whatever, these very rapid, more like almost hybrid between mobile game and like desktop game approaches. They still give you a lot of reach, basically, these platforms, compared to something like Steam or itch.io, because they also have like curation and algorithms and all of that. And your game mechanics, once again, need to be way less big and like deep games. You can be way more focused on what am I actually doing as my core gameplay loop and focus on improving the game there. And that is how you actually improve. You don't improve by putting a game out on Steam. You improve by making more games. And yeah, you can put out more games on Steam as well, but the Steam part can kind of just be ignored, especially for those first games. You put the bar for yourself at the end of the day, where I'm like, okay, you kind of need at least like a 6.5 out of 10 if you want to participate on Steam. That doesn't mean that if you're making a game that's a 7 out of 10, you're not allowed to put it on itch.io. That doesn't mean that you cannot put the higher standard. Like Steam doesn't demand at the end of the day that you have a certain like quality standard. It's kind of the market that just decides if your game is under this bar, we're just not gonna buy it because there's no appeal in it. But you are the person who sets that bar for yourself, basically. There are extremely polished 8 out of 10 games, 9 out of 10 games on itch.io as well that are not on Steam. The developers just decided for themselves, like, hey, even though this is maybe like more of a side project, that doesn't mean I'm going to half-ass this. That doesn't mean I'm not going to do the core things, such as having an options menu in my game so I can change my fucking volume sliders. The amount of viewer games that I get that have no settings is driving me fucking mad. Do not put games and demos on Steam if you do not have an options menu. I beg you, for the love of God, it makes me so sad every time that I see it. And you put those games out there, and it's also about finding out, once you are like getting better at what games I am good at, and also realizing what games you aren't good at. Your games that maybe even if you put in the time and effort, you still couldn't get to that minimum bar. You still couldn't get good enough to put on Steam, and realizing this fast enough to stop working on them and to start looking for other things that you do like. Yes, we have canceled a little bit too many games in 2025 because we barely released anything, but I'm kind of happier that we did that. Then we just like announced 7 different games, and then each time just realize, this is actually not a game we can make good enough, and then kind of just have it be like in limbo and never end up releasing. We've taken a lot of Steam pages down as well of like games that we realized like, yeah, actually these are not the games for us. These are not the games that we should make. I've made these mistakes that you've made as well. But I think what we have learned now is that we are getting better at realizing that, hey, actually we shouldn't be making very art-heavy games if we are a programming-first developer, for example. So when does Steam make sense? I think it makes sense when you have like a few things. First, you need to have a clear hook. What is special about your game? Why do people want to play your game? The second thing is also appeal, which is kind of a little bit different than the hook, basically. Appeal is like someone looks at the game and is like, I want this. I think with MO98 we saw this with the trailer. The trailer kind of blew up. People saw that game. They didn't even fully understand the hook yet because they just saw the visuals, but they were like, I don't care, I want this. And you can just have interesting gameplay. Steam should be there once you know I am reaching that bar. I'm getting my 6.5, my 7 out of 10 game out there. I'm confident in it. I believe that I'm at a point now where if I show a screenshot or a 30-second trailer of my game, those are two things that you need to have. You need to have screenshots without placeholder assets, I would say, and you need to have like 20 to 30 seconds of like actual gameplay, not just walking around in an empty world, to show to your audience as well. And I think those are like some of the bare minimum things before you even start considering a Steam page. Having some sort of a trailer, having good visual appeal, and then having the game to actually back it up once you get closer to the demo aspect. But if you do not have those things, I ask you, give yourself a higher standard and do not put it on Steam. There's this video, maybe I'm gonna link it somewhere. One of the videos that was the most influential for me as a game developer is a video by Masahiro Sakurai, who is the main developer or like the inventor of Kirby and then like the Super Smash Bros. Series. And he also has a game dev YouTube channel. It's kind of over now, but the video that he uploaded that had the most impact on me was the one where he just tells you, act like a professional. You're not going to always be doing the stuff that you like. Maybe, that's game development. but you should always keep yourself to the standard of a professional. You should always ask yourself, is this good enough? And if it's not, then you need to figure out a better way to, one, make it better or move on. But it doesn't make sense to ship something that you are not happy with the result and you know that the result is also not good enough from yet. I think it's a really good video. It's pretty short. I'll probably link it up somewhere. That's kind of all I really have to say. I know there are some people here like, oh, but I'm making my dream game and it's just a hobby. But it's like, if you're making your dream game and it's just a hobby, then even then, honestly, I still think it doesn't belong on Steam. Yeah, maybe it's like your dream to put a game on Steam, but honestly, the more I've been working with Steam, the more I realize that putting a game out on Steam means absolutely nothing if nobody wants your game anyway. So that out of the way, this was my little rant. I please hope that you guys keep making games and especially keep raising the bar for yourselves. Last year, when I made like a similar video, I said I am going to raise that bar for myself. And I did that. And I think it's been one of the best things we could have done for our studio in determining we need to reach this certain level of quality before we start thinking about like commercial parts and all of that of our game. And I ask you to do the same. Apart from that, thank you very much for watching. If you're new here, we're game developers and we make 2 videos every week talking about game development and the things that we learn along the way. We're on the road to build $1 million studio in 2026 and I hope you want to join us on that. If you want to do that, you can head down below and subscribe and you'll be notified the moment we upload a video. Thank you very much for watching. I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye!